Sort of standing around, there's some seats still, and if you could find a place to sit down, that would be great. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum.
Council Baker. Here. Council Campbell.
Here.
Council Siomo. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Sabi George. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Councilor Janey.
Present.
Councilor McCarthy. Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Presley. Councilor Wu. And Councilor Zakem. Madam President, we have full house.
Wonderful. Thank you, and thank you to all my colleagues, and thank you, Madam Clerk. I am informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I would like all guests, staff, and councilors to please rise as Councilor Janey comes to introduce our clergy for the afternoon. I would like everyone to remain standing after the invocation for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Janey.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I'm just so thrilled this afternoon to present Reverend Liz Walker of Roxbury Presbyterian Church. Yes, this is an amazing church, not only in my district, but right in my own neighborhood. In addition to the traditional ministries of Roxbury Pres, it is home to a trauma education project which addresses the epidemic of post-traumatic stress in communities of color that are all too often overrun by violence. Roxbury Pres was a leader in supporting parents and students and educators in their fight for a new building at the Dearborn School, and I'm proud to say that that school will open as a new state-of-the-art facility, scheduled to open this fall, thanks in many ways to your leadership. She was called to ministry after her life journey as a humanitarian, as a journalist, and that's how I remember you as a little girl, watching you as the very first African-American news anchor in Boston here, and we're just so proud of you. She has traveled to Sudan on a fact-finding mission and to do mission work on the controversial slave trade there. And this led her to co-found My Sister's Keeper. She has received so many awards. She's a graduate of the Harvard Divinity School. She's a member of many boards, including a core strategy team of the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. Just serves on so many boards, so many honorary degrees, an award-winning journalist and producer, a minister and a mentor, a humanitarian, and she is the most dynamic, thoughtful, generous person living in our city, and I am so blessed to call her friend. Please welcome Reverend Liz Walker. Thank you so much.
I love you.
Good afternoon. I promise that introduction is longer than my prayer. If we could just take a deep breath and let it out. Let us pray. Creator God, fount of wisdom, spirit of justice, restorer of all things, we ask you to bless these leaders on this day, especially on this day. Govern their hearts and minds, help them to make and keep this city a home for all its people, a space of equity, a place of peace. You have taught us that we are members one of another, and that we can never live to ourselves alone. Help us to remember that this day, that all our lives depend upon the work of many minds and hands, and that we are here not just to serve the comfortable, but to serve everybody. Whether they work or are without work, whether they are homeless or well-housed, fulfilled or frustrated, cluttered with material goods or scraping a living from what others leave. We pray for all our sisters and brothers. May we share in their sufferings and in their hope. Grant us a vision today, Lord, that we can see what we can achieve, to reach out beyond ourselves, to share our lives with others, to stretch our capabilities, to increase our sense of purpose, to be aware of where we can help, and to always be sensitive both to your presence and to your constant call. We ask these things and all that we hold holy. For me, that is Jesus Christ. Let the people of God together say, Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we have a few presentations before we get into the formal business. Councilor Presley, if you want to come up. Grace, you guys can also come up.
Thank you, President Campbell. Good afternoon, everyone. This week is Foster Alumni Week in Massachusetts, and I wanted to highlight and bring to your attention an incredible resource. I'm honored to present the Massachusetts Network of Foster Care Alumni with a resolution this morning for their work year-round. For those of you unfamiliar with this organization, they are gearing up for their second annual walk. There is a flyer on all of your desks. Their mission is to create community and opportunity for current and former foster youth through education, employment, service, and leadership. Their vision is that alumni of foster care are well connected and well supported through all phases of their lives. I love the frame of this because I think very often youth in foster care and adults who have aged out approach their own life experience from a deficit lens and not an asset. And people think of foster youth and the hardest parts of their journey and don't often see them as the assets that they are to community, and commend them for their resilience and in all the ways that they contribute to our city and to our Commonwealth and indeed our country every day. I know of what I speak. My office, one of my dedicated aides, Luz Villar, many of you are probably unaware that Luz lived in some 22 foster homes and still maintained excellent grades, went on to graduate from Cambridge College and to do that with honors. She is smart, she is resilient, she is compassionate and committed, and she is not alone. There are many formerly foster cared youth like Luz. And so I want to bring before you Grace. She is the program manager for the New England Association of Child Welfare Commissioners and Directors. She earned a Bachelor's of Fine Art from the Columbus College of Art and Design. She holds a Master's of Fine Art with a concentration in metalsmithing from the Artisanry Department at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. So we'll present this formal resolution to you. We thank you for your good work and for being the visionary and the founder behind this much needed organization and effort. We wish you a successful second annual walk and would love for you to talk to my colleagues some more about the work of the organization.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's an honor to be here with you all today. I want to take this moment to recognize the efforts of our AmeriCorps Vista member, without whom this day and this event would not be possible. If you've heard of the AmeriCorps Vista grant, it's a capacity building effort that helps organizations grow the capacity of their organization. So I want to recognize Fiona Rudagengwa. Please give her a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Fiona. How many of you have or know someone whose lives were touched by foster care? Raise your hand, including counselors. I am a former foster youth and an adopted person. I say both and, not either or, because the term foster care alumni was created in 1999. Terms that folks may be more familiar with include orphan and ward of the court, neither of which are very positive. But however, the term foster care alumni was created to be an inclusive term that brings together all of the tribes of us who have experienced foster care. we consider people to be foster care alumni if you were in foster care for any period of time in any U.S. state or country in the world. This includes a variety of experiences in foster homes, which people most often think of, in group care settings, which have a variety of different places, in kinship care, which means that you're placed with a relative or kin following removal from your caregiver. It also includes folks who have been reunified or they have gone home after being in foster care, and also in the state of Massachusetts, youth who continue with DCF after the age of 18 through transitional age services, and folks like myself who were adopted from foster care. We all need mirrors, people who look like us, who have been through what we have, to know that success is possible. We're walking on Boston Common because showing up in a public space is transformational, as you all are here today. We're also walking to raise awareness about foster care, to bring together resources for current and former foster youth, including companies who will be employment resources to current and former foster youth, and to bring together an intergenerational group of folks who have experienced foster care. Many folks like myself have gone on, 30 and over, to assimilate this into our life experience and potentially never told our partner, our colleague at work, our person we cycle with on Saturdays that we were in foster care. We are hoping that anyone will join us in this event if you care about folks who have experienced foster care, because you're an ally, and we wouldn't be here with you today either. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present in front of the Boston City Council, and I hope that you will continue to support our mission. As part of our recognition, we are presenting you with our Become an Ambassador Toolkit, which was in part inspired by Councilor Presley. When we met with her, she encouraged me to come up with something that was achievable and big enough to matter, small enough to accomplish and big enough to matter. So I carry her words with me, and there's some educational phrases in here that we hope you'll continue to carry our messaging forward, because you are all now ambassadors of our mission. And we are hoping that one day when people hear the word foster care alumni, they will think of all of the diverse and inclusive folks from all walks of life. We are also presenting you with a pin, and we would love to take a photograph with the city councilors and hold up a shirt of our organizations.
All right, ambassadors, join us at the rostrum here. And if we could just hand clap Grace and the incredible work of this organization.
If all colleagues could come up. Luz, if you could also come up and join this picture for your hard work, that would be great.
Oh, yes. Let's say that now. I just was saying that you know your story. Oh, yeah, I'll be there on Saturday. Yes.
For all the people, yes, for all the people who, for all the folks that are just hearing this term for the first time, when we walked into Councilor Campbell's office, she had not necessarily heard the term foster care alumni and yet has experienced foster care. So the president of your Boston City Council is an alum.
That's right.
And I'm sure there's many more people in this building that we have yet to discover and meet who have a connection to foster care. And we're excited to welcome her as a speaker on Saturday. Thank you so much.
She has the camera. Yeah, but let's okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Councilor Presley, thank you so much for your advocacy, and thank you for this special presentation. Really appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to invite up Councilor McCarthy, who also has a special presentation. And Councilor Wu.
I will have a cookie. Do you have students coming? I do. So I'm looking for the Boston Latin Academy Dragons.
Oh, come up here.
Where are they?
Yeah.
Come on up. So this will be a quick presentation because I have a feeling we might be here for a little while today. Michelle and I just wanted to welcome the BLA Dragons. They put together, they're focusing on civics, which clearly is exactly what we're doing here in this chamber right now. So I do have a whole bunch of presentations, but I'm not going to, we can hand those out later. Come on up. Okay, cool. Cool.
Is there any way we can put this up?
Yep, absolutely, yeah. So there's a couple awards, and I'm going to turn this right over to BLA. There's a couple awards. They won the Changemaker Award at the State House Civics Day. They won the Collaboration and Diversity Award at Civics Day. And they didn't win, but they participated in the advocating for increased funding for Boston infrastructure projects, which is right up my alley. So I wish you would have called me earlier. You might have won. Just saying. So let me hand that over to BLA without further ado. Jump on up.
Hello, my name is Sadie. I'm 14 and I'm from the south end of Boston.
Hello, my name is Lexica Taylor. I'm 14 and I live in Hyde Park.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Lamana. I'm 14 and I'm from South Boston.
Hi, my name is Janaya. I'm 14 and I live in Dorchester.
We're so excited to be here because we worked with an organization called Generation Citizen, and they're an organization all over the United States that helps students in schools be more civically active in our schools. So our poster, the four of us, is the one in the middle. And last month, we won the Changemaker Award, which is the overall best presentation score. And we like to joke around and say we only won because of the lights of our poster. But really, we won because of the lights in our heads. That was really bad. Let's get started.
So the four of us, for our project, our humanities class decided to work on the topic of police brutality. And I'm sure some of you might know about the ombudsman in the city. So it's basically like the complaint system above the police department, and they talk about police complaints.
Okay.
So I want to make sure you can talk.
Right. Thank you. So basically, our project was to make that group go from 3 people to 11. Therefore, we can get a variety of views and different kinds of opinions, and to ultimately stop police brutality in our state as a whole. Is that good?
The people in my class were very passionate about this issue, and that's why we decided to focus our project on it. And thanks again for having us present to the Boston City Council.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi, my name is Mariah. I'm 14, and I live in Dorchester.
Hi, my name's Owen. I'm 14 and I live in South Boston.
Hi, my name's Anthony and I live in Mattapan.
So our project, I didn't put it up there, so I'm pretty sure it's that one, but I'm not sure. We worked on gun violence in our communities, and we are trying to advocate for a police-led anti-gun violence program that teaches youth that guns are not okay, and to try to prevent gun violence early on, because there are so many things right now that are out, like TV shows and toys like Nerf guns and things, that kind of teaches kids that it's like okay to have guns. Like if a kid sees like guns on like a movie, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I want one now. Like, we're trying to teach them that that's not okay. So if we get that started early on, then maybe it would stop. So that's basically what we're trying to advocate for.
Hello, my name is Natasha Mays. I'm 14 and I live in Dorchester.
Hi, my name is Litzy. I'm 13 and I live in Dorchester.
Hello, my name is Sade, and I live in the Seaport District.
So our project, even though it seems a bit unconventional, it's potholes. It's the one to your right. And yes. Ultimately, it has to do with infrastructure and how our roads are so unsafe. Like me personally, I walk to school and it affects us differently. Some people take cars, some people take the MBTA, and ultimately it makes you late. There's a lot of factors that go into this. And our ultimate goal was to allocate some more money to the budget for transportation in order to fix this issue. And we also worked with Generation Citizen, as did all of us, and we looked to people like Michelle Wu, we're so excited to meet her. And hopefully, and our motto is that we can help you pave a smooth road for the future. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, like Natasha said, our project is on potholes, and basically personally, me and Natasha, when our group was first picking out our problem, we were like so against it. We were like, this is so stupid, no. But we realized that this actually affects a lot more people than you think, because a lot of people in America and in the state drive. Like, it's pretty known, especially a lot of millennials, right? So it's like, you drive down road, and then there's a hole, and then you hit the hole, and like there goes $300 flying out your pocket. And it's like, that's not cool, you know, no one wants that, right? So if we can find a permanent solution, not just filling them in, but find a better solution, then we can actually save money and also just like fix our roads, which makes it more convenient for all of us. Yeah.
I'm Justin Norton. I'm the 8th grade humanities teacher at Boston Latin Academy. I'm glad you heard all these projects. We're really excited about civic engagement we do in Boston Latin Academy. It's a really important part of what we do. We're excited about the bill that recently, I believe, passed the Senate and the State House. We hope that it passes for civic education, so we're really excited about that. Thank you very much for the opportunity here.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. That was awesome. I'm not going to read these all, but if Michelle would just read, Sadie came up and kind of took the bull by the horn, so why don't you read Sadie's, and then we'll take a nice picture with everybody.
Okay, so these are official resolutions offered by the Boston City Council. Be it resolved that the Boston City Council extends its congratulations to Sadie Keesbury, and there's one for each of you, in recognition of being awarded a Changemaker Award at the Generation Citizens Action Day at the State House. And be it resolved that the Boston City Council hereby expresses its congratulations and best wishes for continued success, signed by the President of the City Council and attested to by the Clerk of the City of Boston.
So, Sadie, you want to take those? You can hand them out later? You're the best. Thank you so much. You guys want to come up for a quick shot with the dragons? Huh?
I haven't been called a dragon since 60 years.
Yeah, well, you're the dragons, I know.
Can we there we go. No, you're fine. I'm not sure. Yeah. Give that to somebody though, Mr. Norton. You give your phone to somebody.
Yeah, jump up. Mr. Norton.
So we jump in? What do we? Picture.
Great job, guys. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, we have one more presentation, and we're going to keep moving along. Juan from Central Staff, if you could come up. Domingo, if you could come up. Juan? Council Flyer? So this is Domingo Garcia. He is from Texas. He is a leader in his own right in his state. He has roots in Boston and has done tremendous work in the electoral space for Latinos and Latino leaders. I'm going to have actually Juan offer some words because Juan has also been a leader for the central staff for the Boston City Council for years. Yes, and he probably does not get the recognition he deserves, and so I'm going to have him come up to give this presentation. You're in charge.
Well,
You're in charge.
it's fitting that today we've been recognizing our youth and participation in civics, and I'll just let you know a little bit about LULAC. It's the largest and oldest Latino civic organization in the country. Since 1929, it's been involved in every major action in the Supreme, and our own President Kennedy spoke there. It was the first time that Jackie Kennedy spoke in Spanish, and there's all kinds of history and everything. As a matter of fact, through LULAC, Head Start was started, and many, many others. And it's an honor to introduce Domingo. Is a person that has been involved in local, state, and federal initiatives to get more Latinos and Latinas elected. And he was city council in Dallas. He served in the Dallas legislature. He actually co-authored the first in-state tuition bill, which later became, where we know, like the Dreamers Act, and has been replicated in many states. And I'm going to keep it short, but one of the things that makes me proud of being a member of LULAC, League of United Latin American Citizens, is that our shield has the flag. It's got Old Glory right in there. And we always love and defend this great democracy that we have, and that it stands for liberty and justice for all. And that's what we are, a pluribus unum. It is a great honor to present Domingo Garcia, national leader of LULAC.
Thank you. Thank y'all for having me. I'm glad to be here. Haven't been here since I was at Harvard for a little while. But Boston's a city of immigrants. And right now, next week, I'm going to be going to a children's prison in Brownsville, Texas, where they have 18-month-old children up to 17, and whose only crime was that their parents came to America looking for a better life. LULAC is standing with those children, saying that in America we shouldn't have prisons. Think about if when the Irish arrived here in Boston, if their children had been taken away from them, so that would deter further Irish people from coming here, or Italians, or whatever group. But that is what's happening on the border today in the United States of America, and it's a shame. And what LULAC does, it says, you know what, in America the Statue of Liberty stands for something, and it stands for American values. And that's what LULAC is about, and that's why we are fighting to make sure that those children and those new Americans and those new immigrants are given the same opportunity every generation of prior immigrants were given in this country. So I'm glad to be here with you, and I'm proud of the work y'all doing here in Boston. Thank you.
As my colleagues are coming up, I quickly want to add that Councillor Flaherty and I have a presentation for Domingo. I won't read it, or citation. I won't read it. He will take it with him. But we want to thank you for your work. We want to thank you for your advocacy. Immigration is an important issue. There are folks right here in the city of Boston who are living in fear. We're not going to stand for it. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you
we
for
really
having a
appreciate
sanctuary
it.
city for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All my colleagues, if you guys could come up.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, moving right along to the regular order of business, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand approved. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam President, I do want to make a correction on docket 0566. On the vote count, I'd like it to reflect that I did vote no at last week's meeting.
We'll do that. Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. So at this time, if there are no other corrections to be made to the minutes of the last council meeting will be amended and will be approved as amended. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 0913, message and ordinance amending CBC ordinances Chapter 5, Section 5-10.10. I'm sorry, Section 5-5.10, regarding salary categories for certain offices, filed in the office of the City Clerk on June 11th, 2018.
Docket 0913 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0914, message and order approving an appropriation in the total amount of $8,035,055 from fiscal year 2018 Community Preservation Fund revenues for community preservation projects at the recommendation of the City of Boston Community Preservation Committee.
Docket 0914 will be assigned to the Committee on Community Preservation Act.
And Madam President, would you like me to read docket 0915 through 0918?
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket number 0915, message in order to reduce the FY18 appropriation for the Reserve for Collective Bargaining by $207,050 to cover the FY18 costs contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the Boston School Committee and the following unions: Boston School Department Plant Administrators Association, Lunch Hour Monitors Association, and the Boston School Police Unit of the Boston Police Superior Officers Federation. Docket number 0916, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation of $207,050 to cover the FY18 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreement between the Boston Public School Committee and the following unions: the Boston School Department Plant Administrators Association, Lunch Hour Monitors Association, and the Boston School Police Unit of the Boston Police Superior Officers Federation. The terms of the contracts for the Plant Administrators Association and Lunch Hour Monitors Association are September 1st, 2016 through August 31st, 2017, and September 1st, 2017 through August 31st, 2020. The terms of the contracts for the school police units are July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, and July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2% each fiscal year. The agreement also contains other benefits, including new steps, filed in the office of the City Clerk on June 11th, 2018. Docket number 0917, message in order to reduce the FY18 appropriation for the Reserve for Collective Bargaining by $35,253 to provide funding for the Boston Public Health Commission for the FY18 increases contained in the collective bargaining agreement between the Boston Public Health Commission and Local 888 SEIU Coordinators Unit. Docket number 0918, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation order for the Boston Public Health Commission for FY18 in the amount of $35,253 to cover the FY18 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreement between the Boston Public Health Commission and Local 888 SEIU Coordinators Unit. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, and July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2% effective the first pay period of October of each fiscal year. The agreement also contains other benefits, including a new step beginning in fiscal year 2019, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 11, 2018.
Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to ask suspension of the rules and passage of dockets 0915 through 0918. Docket 0915 would move $207,050 from the collective bargaining reserve to the Boston Public Schools. Docket 0916 authorizes use of those funds to pay the following contracts: BPS plant administrators, approximately 12 members in the bargaining unit at a cost of $49,338. 2 consecutive agreements with changes to cost items consistent with previous agreements, such as the 2% annual increases, implementation of new steps to the salary scale, and changes to the clothing allowance. There's an item specific to this contract, which is the one-time issuance of a toolbox. Lunch hour monitors, approximately 350 members, cost $102,729. Again, consecutive bargaining agreements, including language to increase hiring flexibility for the city. Cost items in the contract are also consistent with the previous contracts and include a 2% annual increase and the implementation of new steps to the salary scale. And finally, the Boston Police Superior Officers Federation, approximately 20 members working at BPS at a cost of $54,983. Again, 2 consecutive agreements with changes consistent with the past agreements. Cost items including an annual 2% increase, step increases, and career awards. And currently, as it stands, there are 18 unions without a collective bargaining agreement. The balance for the fiscal year 18 collective bargaining reserve prior to passage of today's dockets is $10,359,262. Docket 0917, again, moves $35,253 from the collective bargaining reserve to the Boston Public Health Commission and authorizes use of those funds to pay the contract for SEIU Local 888 Coordinators Unit. Again, consecutive bargaining agreements, 2% annual increase, adjustment to the steps, and it is consistent with all of the other bargaining agreements that we've reviewed over the past several months and years. Again, my recommendation is that we pass dockets 0915 through 0918.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. At this time, Councilor Siomo, the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0915 through 0918. We will take each of them separately. For docket 0915, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0915 has been passed. For docket 0916, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket. Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. The ayes have it. Docket 0916 has been passed. For docket 0917, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0917 has been passed. For docket 0918, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0918 has been passed. Moving on to docket 0919.
Docket number 0919, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $31,313.74 in the form of a grant for the federal FY17 Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement Grant, awarded by the National Institute of Justice, passed through the Massachusetts State Police/Crime Laboratory, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund training and continuing education for forensic examiners, criminalists, and laboratory personnel.
Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This time I rise to ask respectfully to suspend and pass 0919, as the clerk just read, This is a short money grant for $31,000, and it's for continuing education for our forensics examiners and laboratory personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. At this time, Councilor McCarthy, the chairman of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0919. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0919 has been passed.
Docket number 0920, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $2,442.60 in the form of a grant for the FY18 Child and Adult Care Food Program awarded by the United States Department of Agriculture, passed to the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture Resources to be administered by the Boston Center for Youth and Families. The grant will fund breakfasts and snacks for City Hall Child Care Center.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank each and every one of my colleagues who have worked so closely with me over the last 3 years to improve the quality of school food, and we've made great strides. But in that summer is approaching and school is ending, we will still have the issue of food insecurity to deal with. We are as concerned about learning loss for our students as we are about the meals that they will be missing. So, Madam Chair, I rise to ask that we suspend the rules and accept and expend this grant for the Boston Center for Youth and Families today. This grant will fund meals provided by BPS for children participating in BCYF child care programs. The Child and Adult Care Food Program will allow children in their programs to have a meal without an additional or separate charge. This program provides equitable access to the much-needed nutrition our youth need. It is holistic. This approach, it is social, emotional, and economical services. It engages our youth, and it alleviates the financial burden and the worry that so many of our families are facing with children where summer programs are concerned. As the chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, I move to suspend the rules and to accept this grant today.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. At this time, Councilor Presley, the chairwoman of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0920. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0920 has been passed. Before we move on, I just want to quickly acknowledge we have former City Councilor Michael McCormick in the room. So thank you for being here today. It's important to recognize our former colleagues. Thank you. And moving on now to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 0921 through 0923. Thank you.
Docket number 0921, notice is received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the Mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of May 9th, 2018. Docket number 0922, notice is received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the Mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of May 16th, 2018. And docket number 0923, notice is received from the City Clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the Mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of May 23rd, 2018.
Docket 0921 through 0923 will be placed on file.
Docket number 0924, the constable bonds of Tony Jones and Crystal Long have been duly approved by the Collector Treasurer were received.
The chair seeks approval of docket 0924, and this will be under the usual terms and conditions. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0924 has been approved under the usual terms and conditions. Moving on to reports of committees.
Madam President, would you like me to read docket number 0559 through 0563?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket number 0559. The Committee on Ways and Means, to which was referred on April 11, 2018, docket number 0559, message and order for annual appropriation and tax order for the FY 2019, submits a report recommending the order ought to be rejected without prejudice. Docket number 0560, the Committee on Ways and Means, to which was referred on April 11, 2018. Docket number 0560, message and order for an annual appropriation for the school department for FY 2019. Submits a report recommending the order ought to be rejected without prejudice. Docket number 0561, the Committee on Ways and Means, to which was referred on April 11, 2018. Docket number 0561, message and order approving an appropriation of $40 million in the other post-employment benefits known as OPEB Liability Trust Fund, established under Section 20 of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 20, as added by Chapter 479 of the Acts of 2008, submits a report recommending the order ought to be rejected without prejudice. Docket number 0562, the Committee on Ways and Means, to which is referred on April 11, 2018. Docket number 0562, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to appropriate $53,802,817 from the city's capital grant fund in order to provide funding for various transportation and public realm improvements. These projects are aligned with the goals of Go Boston 2030. The city's transportation master plan, the funds shall be credited to the capital grant fund from the parking meter fund, submits a report recommending the order ought to be rejected without prejudice. And docket number 0563, the Committee on Ways and Means, to which was referred on April 11, 2018, docket number 0563, message and order approving an appropriation of $1,600,000 from the surplus disposition fund credited to the capital fund for the development of master plans, architectural and engineering plans and designs, and for the implementation of such plans and designs for Boston Common, Franklin Park, and the completion of the Emerald Necklace, submits a report recommending the order ought to be rejected without prejudice.
Councilor Sioma, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to ask for rejection without prejudice. These matters represent the fiscal year 19 operating budget and other appropriations, school department, et cetera. They were sponsored by the mayor and referred to the committee on April 11th. In accordance with Chapter 190, Section 15 of the Acts of 1982, the body must take action on these dockets today or they will automatically take effect. To date, the committee has held 28 hearings on the FY19 departmental budgets and their capital projects, totaling over 59 hours, including 4 hours dedicated exclusively to public testimony. We've been distributing for your review written testimony from all other departments that did not undergo a hearing in this chamber. At this time, I recommend that dockets 0559 through 0563 be rejected without prejudice to allow for more time to review recently submitted written testimony and in advance of an expected resubmission to reflect updated budget priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sioma. At this time, Councilor Sioma, who is the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, recommends that we reject the budget without prejudice, and that's what those dockets are. This is dockets 0559 through 0563. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Dockets 0559 through 0563 will be rejected without prejudice. Moving on to docket 0764.
Docket number 0764. The Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on May 16, 2018, docket number 0764, an ordinance allowing short-term rentals in the City of Boston, submits a report recommending the ordinance ought to pass in a new draft.
Just to set a couple of ground rules, because apparently there's going to be some fireworks at the council today. Not having it. So I want to tell you this. I want to recognize the advocacy of every single person who is here and who could not attend this meeting today. I know it is an issue that everyone cares about, as well as my colleagues and the staff who work for my colleagues. So we want to be respectful. So I ask everyone to hold any applause, shouting, to listen, because I know I have some other things that might be coming forward from other counselors. I want everyone to be able to hear those remarks and to be able to listen to those remarks. And then, of course, we as counselors have to take votes on these remarks. So I just ask everyone to be respectful of each other and to thank everyone for packing this house today. I really appreciate it. Councilor Flaherty, the chairman of the Committee on Government Operations, you have the floor.
President, docket 0764, an ordinance allowing short-term residential rentals in the city of Boston, was sponsored by Mayor Martin Walsh and referred to the Committee on Government Operations back on May the 16th, 2018. The Committee on Government Operations held a working session on docket 0764 on May 21st of 2018. Docket 0764 provides a framework to allow and regulate short-term rentals in the city through a registration process under the jurisdiction of the Inspectional Services Department. It establishes 3 categories of short-term rentals, which are home share units, limited share unit, and owner adjacent unit. It should be noted that this ordinance does not allow for investor units, but does allow for exempt residential units that have been furnished and contracted for institutional and business stays. The proposal also prohibits residential units such as income-restricted units from short-term rentals. The proposal exempts residential units such as licensed lodging houses, existing bed and breakfast, from being part of this docket. There are also registration fees and penalties and other protections, for example, right to a hearing, in place for both city and short-term rental operators. The committee heard from the Department of Neighborhood Development's Chief Sheila Dillon, Inspectional Services Commissioner William Christopher, IGR Policy Analyst Christopher English, DUIT Chief Patricia Boyle McKenna, and Chief of Policy Joyce Linehan, all whom spoke on behalf of Mayor Walsh's administration. My colleagues and I, along with the administration, have heard from members of the public that attended not only working sessions on this docket, but also took into consideration comments and suggestions that were stated in a prior lengthy public hearing on a previous docket, which was then followed up with 2 public working sessions on the same subject matter. Additionally, throughout a transparent and detailed and thorough committee process over the last 5 months, we heard from an array of stakeholders who have expressed their concern, along with offering testimony both in favor and against this proposal. My role as the chair is to be fair and objective throughout the collective legislative process, taking into consideration all viewpoints, as well as all prospective amendments that were presented to the council, and giving everyone an opportunity to be heard. What I have forwarded in this amended version of the docket takes into account the impartial totality of both the sum and substance of the testimonies and suggestions that were presented to the Boston City Council. And so as a result of that testimony, the committee is presenting a new draft with the following amendments: adding a sentence to update the definition of short-term rental registries to provide notice and transparency while addressing privacy concerns; amending subsection D to allow an owner-adjacent unit to offer their owner-adjacent unit as a short-term rental for 365 days a year; adding a sentence at the end of subsection A that requires the Inspectional Service Department to submit to the short-term rental registry and make that available electronically within 30 days. And also adding new language in section 2 that requires the Commissioner of Inspectional Services to annually prepare a report detailing the activities of the short-term rental registry, which will be filed in the clerk's office beginning June 30th, 2019. Our hope is at some point after the annual reporting that we may be able to go to biannual or quarterly, but the stepping off point was to work with the Commissioner of Inspectional Services, allow him and his team to kind of get the process started. It is my intention that the amended legislation has been filled with issues that not only address many aspects of a growing industry, but also assist in alleviating the burdens that are placed on the rental housing market in our growing city. The next year will be a learning period to see how this ordinance has impacted the industry as well as our city. And if needed, we, as the members of Boston City Council, working with the administration, can revisit the conversation to take further action or to file further amendments. So it's one of the things where not everyone is going to be completely pleased, but I did the best to try to get and find that middle ground for our colleagues and for all the stakeholders and members of the public. So as the chair of the Committee on Government Operations, I recommend that docket 0764 ought to pass in a new draft. Thank you, Madam President.
At this time, I'm going to take a quick recess. Everyone could take their seats, that would be great. Just some points of clarification. So, Councilor Flaherty, thank you for your report and recommendation. At this time, I know that there are various colleagues who want to offer up amendments to what has been recommended by the Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. At this time, Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor. Actually, hold on one second. Madam Clerk, if you could read the two amendments that Councilor O'Malley is offering into the record, and then Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor. Thank you.
The first amendment from Councilor Matt O'Malley, on docket number 0764. Docket 0764 as amended shall be further amended as follows. In 9-14-5.5, requirements for short-term rental, subsection D, of an owner-adjacent unit, the 365 days per year will be capped at 120 days per the original proposal. D, short-term rental of any owner-adjacent unit, an operator may offer their own adjacent unit as a short-term rental for up to 120 days, consecutive or non-consecutive days per year, filed in the council on June 13, 2018. Amendment of Councilor Matt O'Malley on docket number 0764. Docket 0764 as amended shall be further amended as follows. New language is added in section 2 to further specify requirements, adding the following language. 1, in the first sentence following the words Commissioner of ISD, in consultation with DND and do it, and 2, by adding the following language after the last sentence following the word council. The report shall estimate the impact of 9-14.5 subsection D on the number of units removed from the long-term housing stock, the number of evictions caused by such conversions from long-term housing to short-term rentals, the increase in home prices and rents in the relevant categories of owner-occupied 2 and 3 family homes, the differential between annual short-term rental revenue and annual long-term rental revenue in an owner-adjacent unit, and future projections of these impacts. Said report shall, to the extent practicable, disintegrate information neighborhood by neighborhood and other relevant categories. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. And just a point of parliamentary inquiry, I should speak on both of these, and then we will vote on them individually?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a fan of the game Jenga. I'm sure many of you are as well. It's a block game where you have blocks that sit crisscrossed on one another. It builds a tower. The purpose of the game is to remove the blocks one by one so that you take down the tower. Now, I mention this because I think it's an analogous situation to crafting legislation. If you pull a block at the wrong time or at the wrong juncture, the whole thing can collapse. And while I appreciate the chairman of Government Ops and think there's a lot of good things in his revised ordinance, I think that there could be potentially something that could cause all blocks to fall. And I'm talking, of course, about removing the 120-day cap and allowing for 365 or unlimited nights during the course of a year. I'm proposing an amendment today which would reinstate that 120-day cap on owner-adjacent short-term rentals. As many of you know, in the original proposal from the Walsh administration, it was 90 days. Then in the revised one, it went to 120 days. And now in the most recent revised one that's before us right now, it's gone to 365 days. Now, this process has been productive in educating all of us on the dangers of investor Airbnb downtown, as well as the benefits of Airbnb and similar platforms for owner-occupied landlords. These are both critically important. But if we remove the 120-day cap on Airbnb in this ordinance, we are condemning our outer neighborhoods and many of our most vulnerable residents to the unintended consequences. My district and many of yours includes 2- and 3-family homes where landlords who live in one unit rent out the rest of their building to the working class of our city. New immigrants, young people, artists, bartenders, other renters not yet able to own a home. The combination of home ownership and working class renters is not new to our city. It's how my family grew up. It's how many of your families grew up. It's how residential neighborhoods have thrived as mixed income communities for hundreds of years. Now, today I recognize that we have an innovation economy that I have always supported, and I'm a frequent user myself. But we're choosing today on how to implement the innovation economy for the benefit of all Boston residents, so I ask you to consider the unintended consequences of having no caps in our neighborhoods, particularly our outer neighborhoods. By banning most Airbnbs in larger buildings while allowing unlimited Airbnbs in owner-adjacent units of triple-deckers, we push the conversions, the rent increases, and the evictions from Chinatown to Roslindale, from the North End to Roxbury, from Back Bay to East Boston. By eliminating the cap, we change a local landlord's economic interest. They will make far more money by having a short-term Airbnb-type platform to tourists than renting out these units to a long-term tenant. By eliminating the cap, we also push up the price of buying a home. Our neighborhood triple-deckers are sold right now based on the value of their rent. If they are sold based on the far higher value of year-round Airbnbs, buying a home will cost more and be even further out of reach. In our outer neighborhoods, local landlords who live downstairs and rent out upstairs rent to nurses, artists, bartenders. But by now they've started to use that upstairs for Airbnb instead. And this is important to note. We shouldn't look at the figures about how many triple-deckers in outer neighborhoods are currently using Airbnb and other type platforms, but what the potential could be. Ford Cavallari, who many of you know, or all of us know by now, estimates that with a 120-day cap, 2% of these 2- and 3-family units will convert to Airbnb. With no cap, we could be looking at closer to 10% of units. That's 1,700 homes changing from renters to tourists. That's almost the 2,000 units that we expected to get back. This is the unintended consequence that I hope we all take seriously. So I urge you to please support me in this amendment. I hope you will vote with me to stop from turning Boston to a neighborhood into many hotels in the outer neighborhoods. You should be able to make money owning your home and renting it out to people, and you should be able to take advantage of Airbnb, and that's why we allowed for 120 up from 90. But again, I think that there is tremendous peril should this pass as 365. Urge you to join me in 120. The second amendment, very briefly, this is a little bit more straightforward. This has to deal with reporting. I respect, obviously, everyone's support for short-term rentals in 2- and 3-family homes, and we know there are many sides of this issue. But the second amendment that will be before us includes D&D and DO-IT along with ISD to report the council 6 months after the ordinance goes into effect, should it go into effect. Given its impact on our housing market and the technology needed to enforce it, I believe that this is a very important addition. Earlier, I just laid out some of the potential impacts of removing the 120-day cap, and this amendment allows us to track how this ordinance affects renters, homebuyers, homeowners, and the overall housing stock. In particular, it calls for tracking impacts for our different neighborhoods in order to see how every block in the city is affected. Data collection could itself deter bad actors from finding loopholes in our regulation because they know they'll be caught. In voting on this important ordinance, each of us is making a prediction on how Airbnb and this regulation will impact our city. Even though I don't agree with everything on it, I think, as I said, tremendous credit to the chairman for putting together something that's thoughtful, and I hope that these 2 amendments are added to it to make it an even stronger ordinance. Thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Council O'Malley. At this time, Council Wu, would you like to speak on Council O'Malley's amendment? Perfect. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I just want to, I'm going to try not to speak on every amendment, so I'm going to do some summary remarks now and then hopefully just vote each time afterwards.
No, you can speak on every amendment as they come up. It makes it easier.
Well, overall, I just want to say that this has been a long process for the City of Boston and a lot of hours of work for so many across the city. So I do want to thank Mayor Walsh and the administration so much for all the time and research they put in. I want to thank Councilor Flaherty for shepherding all of us through a lot of learning and discussions and really working hard to make sure that every perspective was heard through his public process that he ran. I want to thank Councilor Edwards, who's been my partner in thinking through changes from the beginning on this, as well as all the advocates, some of whom were already mentioned, for doing incredible amounts of outside research, both quantitative, anecdotal, field, sort of secret shopping research on Airbnb. We have learned so much from the city, so much about the city thanks to all of your work. And I hope this partnership can continue onto other issues as well. So I just wanted to say that. I was very public in supporting the mayor's proposed language which included the provision that Councilor O'Malley is hoping to reinstate with his amendment. It is, the 120-day cap is something that I have actually evolved on. So I want to clarify and put out there that what I think is most important is reasonable regulation that we enact today to limit the loopholes. We need legislation passed at the end of all of these amendments that eliminates the investor units from Boston's market and also limits it to owner occupants. So what I'm saying is that I will be voting this way and that way at the end. If this amendment does not survive, I will still support Councilor Flaherty's recommended version as well. But I want to explain why I do think that this amendment is important and why my thinking has changed on it. When Councilor Edwards and I had proposed our original amendment, it did not include a cap on these owner-adjacent units. I have since learned about a new co-hosting model that a lot of the platforms are implementing. This allows for owner-occupants who would fit into our framework to very easily partner with or be contacted by or have corporations reach out to them in order to set up a new business model. And the reality is that we're not quite sure what the impacts will be on the 2 and 3 family, the sort of housing stock outside of downtown, because we don't know how quickly demand will change, how much the first part of our regulation, eliminating investor units, will impact the neighborhoods. What we do know is that the corporations and the platforms are already changing to accommodate that. They're already creating the mechanisms to be able to reach out to every 2 or 3 family owner occupant on the street and say, could we, for just a cut of your profit, do everything for you and make it much easier than it is right now to manage those properties. Again, changing, getting away from that original vision of pure home sharing. There is a possibility without the cap that we will end up with these horizontal hotels of many units on a street through partnership models continue to be operated as de facto hotels. We don't know if this will happen, and that's the big uncertainty. I think some of the disagreement is many of us, as I thought before, as my original thinking was that the downtown demand won't easily translate into the neighborhoods because distance from transit, distance from a lot of the tourist activities, but because of that big uncertainty, I am going to be voting to err on the side of a more restrictive and more limited piece of legislation to start with. It will be very difficult. I know we'll try to continue staying up to date and adjusting as we go along, but a year from now, 2 years from now, it will be difficult to continue taking things away from new business opportunities that have arisen in the loopholes that we have left open. So again, I support the efforts of our chair here and the efforts of the council as a whole to get something done today because we desperately need action to stem the flow of future units being sucked into the de facto hotel markets. But I will be supporting Councilor O'Malley's amendment heartily with both amendments, but particularly the cap. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Wu, very much. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with the statement that the removing the cap will push this business into the neighborhoods. But I will not be voting for the First Amendment. But the Second Amendment, I would like to commend Councilor O'Malley on this one because we're going into this discussion here without any data. It's a data-driven society here. We haven't seen anything on positive impacts, negative impacts. We can possibly see the negative impacts in certain areas, but you can also see the positive impact. So thank you for the data. Hopefully when the data comes in, we can revisit this honestly and thank you, Madam Chair. And good job, Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Anyone else wishing to speak on the 2 amendments offered by Councilor O'Malley? We will take a vote on each of them separately, starting with a 120-day cap. Is there a second? Councilor Zachem has second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Nay. Thank you all. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll. And a vote, if we could clarify what a vote yes means and what a vote no means, that would be great.
A vote for yes means you accept the amendment as written by Councilor O'Malley, and a no vote says you reject the amendment. and this is the 120-day cap. Counselor Baker?
No.
Counselor Baker, no. Counselor Campbell?
No.
Counselor Campbell, no. Counselor Siomo? No. Counselor Siomo, no. Counselor Edwards? No. Counselor Edwards, no. Counselor Asabi George? Yes. Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty? No. Counselor Flaherty, no. Counselor Flynn? No. Counselor Flynn, no. Counselor Janey? No. Counselor Janey, no. Counselor McCarthy? No. Counselor McCarthy, no. Counselor O'Malley? Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley? Yes. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu? Yes. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem? Yes. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, we have 5 in the affirmative and 8 in the negative.
Say again.
The First Amendment does not pass.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The First Amendment does not pass. Moving on to the Second Amendment, which has to do with data collection and reporting. Is there a second? Second. There is a second from Councilor McCarthy. All those in favor of the Second Amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Nay. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Thank you, Madam President. Counselor Baker?
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell?
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo? Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards? Yes. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George? Yes. Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty? No. Counselor Flaherty, no. Counselor Flynn? Yes. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey? Yes. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy? Yes. Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley? Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley? Yes. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu? Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem? Yes. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, the Second Amendment of Counselor O'Malley on docket number 0764 has received 12 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote in the negative.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Second Amendment offered by Councilor Matt O'Malley has been adopted. Moving on.
Okay, so.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Okay, hold on. Just so many pieces of paper. Thank you, Madam President. I wish to offer an amendment that would include 2 provisions. The first.
Oh, I apologize. Again, we have to read these into the record.
Oh, sorry. Please.
Sorry about that. Madam Clerk, if you could read Councilor Wu's proposed amendment into the record.
Thank you, Madam President. Amendment of Council Michelle Wu on docket 0764, amended draft. Docket 0764 as amended shall be further amended as follows. 1, in section 19-14.5, requirements for short-term rentals, delete the following phrase, other than in the case of an operator owning an owner-adjacent unit. And 2, in section 3, add the following subsection, A, sunset period for existing units contracted for short-term rentals, residential units with executed leases for short-term rentals as of June 1st, 2018, and that are not on the ineligible unit list defined by section 9-14.4A above may continue to operate until the completion of the lease term or until September 1st, 2019, whichever date is first.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to offer an amendment to now the amended draft of the ordinance that would have 2 provisions. The first would eliminate the ability of an owner-occupant of a 2 or 3 family home to offer 2 full units at the same time, meaning that someone who is in a triple-decker and lives on the first floor and wants to have a tenant on the second floor and Airbnb the top floor, they could Airbnb the top floor 365 days a year. They could Airbnb the extra bedrooms within their unit 365 days a year. But if they wanted to take advantage of putting their entire primary resident unit on the market as well while they're on vacation or gone for the summer, which they're allowed to as up to 90 days, they would not be able to do 2 full units for the full 90 days. My reasoning behind this is that in this the justification for the owner-adjacent unit is that we're essentially treating that extra unit within the 2 or 3 family home as an extra bedroom in that person's house. They live there, they're on site, and it's a small house, so what happens in that one piece of it has a big impact on their cash flow. So if we are treating it as an extra bedroom, I believe that that person should be on site when they offer the extra unit. So if you are going, if your tendency is to go to Florida for 3 months a year or go to wherever for the entire summer, we don't want that 2-family to turn into a de facto hotel for the entirety of the 90 days that you're able to do that under the existing language. So this would just tighten it up by a little bit to say, feel free 365 days a year to put your extra unit up, to put all the extra bedrooms in your own unit up. But if you're not on site, you can only do 1 full unit at a time. The second provision is a sunset period for the existing units. And this is something that I'm sort of surprised to see myself offering because I've been squarely on the side of wanting to tighten this up as much as possible. But through many conversations with the Post Alliance and others who are in this business, have learned that there are many considerations and long-term agreements and contracts, sometimes multi-years, that have been signed that have an impact on people's mortgages, on people's ability to keep ownership of their homes. So this provision would extend the date out for those who have a pre-existing lease agreement as of this month to September. So the effective date would still be January for registration, for everything else, so no one should be accepting new bookings or continuing to build their business. But if you're having those conversations about firing employees or losing business opportunities, this gives people that extra bit of time to run their leases until the next rental cycle. It's a little bit tight to find a new tenant in a lot of those cases because a lot of the September leases are starting to be signed now or will be signed in the next couple of weeks. So I offer both of them together because it was important for me that the first one was tied to the second. I know there's some question about whether there's a division, and I'll make decisions from there, but did want to recognize and acknowledge that our decisions today will have an impact on the business opportunities and limiting the money that people will make. And if we can ease that for the businesses in a way that is still respectful of the implementation as quickly as possible, I think that's a reasonable compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just move to divide the question, and obviously due respect to the previous speaker who did tremendous work. Her advocacy is why we're here today, and a big part of her thumbprint is on today's ordinance. But the amendment is actually 2 amendments. It's one involving Section 19-14.5, and the other one is Section 3. So my argument would be that we should divide the question. They're 2 separate and distinct amendments. One that's found on page 4 of the ordinance, and the other one I think is found on page 10. And just ask that we divide the question and take them as 2 separate amendments and 2 separate votes. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilor Flaherty, thank you. There's a second by Councilor Baker. This is in the discretion of the chair. The discretion of the chair, that being me, has the discretion to determine whether or not we should divide an amendment. This is in when it makes sense. And because I want to be consistent, everyone is offering amendments and doing them separately, and we're taking votes on them separately. So at this point, I rule that we should divide the question. So we will take a vote on each of Councilor Wu's offered amendments separately. Does that make sense? Okay. Would you like to speak on? Just want to cite Rule 9, that's all. I'm invoking Rule 9. That's right. Thank you. And for the record, Madam Clerk, it is Rule 9, divide the question. At this time, I'm going to move to take up.
Just to clarify, I may withdraw the second amendment if the first, depending on what happens with the first, but just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. So starting with the first amendment, which has to do with deleting the language referring to other than in the case of an operator owning an owner-adjacent unit. Is there a second for that amendment? Madam Clerk, if you could reflect that there is a second from Councilor O'Malley. All those in favor of adopting this, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Nay. Madam Clerk, thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll on that first amendment. Thank you.
On Councilor Wu's First Amendment on docket number 0764. Councilor Baker?
No.
Councilor Baker, no. Councilor Campbell?
No.
Councilor Campbell, no. Councilor Siomo? No. Councilor Siomo, no. Councilor Edwards? Yes. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George? Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty? No. Councilor Flaherty, no. Councilor Flynn? Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey? Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy? No. Councilor McCarthy, no. Councilor O'Malley?
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley? Yes. Councilor Presley, yes. Councilor Wu? Yes. Councilor Wu, yes. Councilor Zachem? Yes. Councilor Zachem, yes. 4, 6, 8. Madam President, the First Amendment on docket number 0764 of Councilor Wu had 7 votes in the affirmative and 5 votes in, no, that's not right.
Nope.
8 votes in the affirmative and
Yes.
5 votes in the negative.
Thank you. The First Amendment offered by Councilor Wu has been adopted. Councilor Wu, do you still want to take a vote on the second, or do you want to withdraw the Second Amendment?
I want to recognize that Council Baker was also planning to file the same one, so I'm happy to.
That's correct. Councilor Baker, would you like to speak, as you were offering an amendment that is similar in language to Councilor Wu? On moving on to the Second Amendment offered by Councilor Wu, which is similar to the amendment that you were offering. Would you like to speak on that? This is the sunset provision.
Yes.
Okay. So just for clarification for the audience, Councilor Baker also offered an amendment similar to Councilor Wu on the sunset provision, so I'm allowing him to speak on that because they are the same.
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilor Wu, for putting this forward, to paying attention to the city's economy on this one. I think it would be, it might be a bad mistake if we had thousands of apartments in the middle of January trying to rent. That could have an adverse effect on any neighborhood that had multiple apartments vacant in January. So thank you, and I will be voting yes on this one.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. And rather than obviously take Councilor Baker, who offered the same amendment, I'm going to ask you formally to withdraw that one or to sign on to Councilor Wu's, which is the same language.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. That makes it a lot easier. So at this time, the amendment on each of your desks, there's one separate from Councilor Baker, another that is separate from Councilor Wu. We're going to fold those in together. It will be a joint amendment offered by Councilor Wu and Councilor Baker. It is a sunset provision. Is there a second to take a vote on this? There is a second to take a vote on this. At this time, all those in favor of adopting this proposed amendment by Councilor Baker and Councilor Wu, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, I'm going to doubt the vote, but Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll on the sunset provision amendment offered by Councilor Wu and Councilor Baker. And we will get new language so that it's reflected that the amendment is offered by both of them.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, no, I know, but it's also Councilor Baker's.
He's withdrawing.
Oh, thank you. All right. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo. Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George. Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty. No. Councilor Flaherty, no. Councilor Flynn. Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey. No. Councilor Janey, no. Councilor McCarthy. Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley. Yes. Councilor Presley, yes. Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem. Councilor Zachem, yes. Madam President, the Second Amendment of Councilor Wu has received 11 votes in the affirmative and 2 votes in the negative.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Second Amendment offered jointly by Councilor Wu and Councilor Baker has been adopted.
So it is joint.
Moving on,
That's what I was trying to say.
Councilor Baker, you have another amendment? Madam Clerk, if you could read the other amendment offered by Councilor Baker.
Amendment of Councilor Frank Baker, docket number 0764, amended draft. Docket number 0764 is amended, shall be further amended in the definition section 9-14.2 relating to the definition of the term owner-adjacent unit. The definition of owner-adjacent unit shall be amended by striking the words 2-family or 3-family dwellings. In line 4 and inserting in place thereof the following words: 6 or fewer residential dwellings, and shall be amended in the line 6 by striking the words 3-family residential dwellings and inserting in place thereof the following words: 3 to 6 unit residential dwellings. Filed in the council on June 13th, 2018.
Councilor Baker, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. Is this sausage making here?
This is. Here we
Good.
go.
Okay. So this amendment here is more for just consistency among our rental registration ordinance and our residential exemption. So if you receive a residential exemption, live into up to a 6-family, you're allowed to do 1 unit. I don't think we're going to come across very many people that are owner-occupied six-family dwellings. And again, more to just stay consistency with the rental registration ordinance and the residential exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Is there a second on Councilor Baker's second? We have a second by Councilor Siomo. At this time, we will take a vote on the amendment offered by Councilor Baker. All those in favor say aye.
I think it's 5.
Any opposed say nay.
I think it's 5.
I'm going to doubt the vote. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on Councilor Baker's proposed amendment?
On Councilor Baker's proposed second amendment on docket number 0764. Councilor Baker?
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell?
No.
Councilor Campbell, no. Councilor Siomo?
Yes.
Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards? Councilor Edwards, no. Councilor Asabi George? Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty? No. Councilor Flaherty, no. Councilor Flynn? No. Councilor Flynn, no. Councilor Janey? No. Councilor Janey, no. Councilor McCarthy? Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley? No. Councilor O'Malley, no. Councilor Presley? No. Councilor Presley, no. Councilor Wu? No. Councilor Wu, no. And Councilor Zakam? No. Councilor Zakam, no. Madam President, we have 4 in the affirmative and 9 in the negative, and this second amendment fails.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The second amendment offered by Councilor Baker has failed. Moving on to Councilor Siomo. Madam Clerk, if you could read the offered amendment by Councilor Siomo into the record.
Sure. We're just trying to keep our paperwork together here.
No, take your time. Thank you.
Amendment of Councilor Mark Siomo, docket number 0764, amended draft. Docket number 0764, as amended, shall be further amended by adding a new subsection E in 9-14.14b relating to investor units. E shall read, investor units, a residential unit offered as a short-term rental that is not the primary residence of the operator. Investor units shall be limited to buildings of 10 or more units, and an operator may offer his or her investor unit as a short-term rental for 365 days per year, provided that the total number of investor units per any single residential building do not exceed 5% of the total units. Filed in council on June 13th, 2018.
Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let me preface I'm going to add a little spice to the sausage because
Because you're Italian?
Because I'm Italian.
We
First,
love
let me
you.
thank Councilor Flaherty for all his work herding the cats here and getting to where we're actually voting on this today. I can't support the recommendation from the committee report without the investor units, because I believe, and I've said many times at the working sessions, and about unintended consequences that were brought up by both Councilor O'Malley and Councilor Wu. I see all the eligible units during our working session in order to protect downtown, which has a total of 419 owner-occupied 2, and 3 families in the 10 neighborhoods that make up the downtown core, 419. In the neighborhoods, my neighborhood, Frank, a little south of 17,000. Councilor Wu expressed one of my biggest fears, that there's going to be agents out there contacting every owner-occupant, trying to get them to list. They'll do all the work. I don't see how we get around that without having competition. I believe we're creating an imbalance in the market. 419 in the downtown core versus 17,000 in the neighborhoods. Economically, I think that's bad imbalance. And the imbalance of, well, let me regroup. So the most affordable housing in our city is in the neighborhoods, in 2 and 3 families. We're incentivizing a new business model without having any competition, any downtown availability in units, whether they're big building, 100-unit buildings or whatever, and they're able to do 5 units. Less impactful on everybody's neighborhood, and create some competition economically. So I would also say that putting many hardworking people who are tied to the short-term rental business right now, we're going to be eliminating jobs. And finally, when we start talking about enforcing days, I still can't be satisfied with what I've heard from DoIT or ISD, how we're going to count days. How are we going to know if somebody goes to Florida for 3 weeks and lets their apartment empty and throws in an Airbnb for a couple of weeks? How do we do that? I want sensible regulation, but I also think we need competition from buildings, where people go into buildings, if they're actually impacting the building, our neighborhoods don't feel that impact. If we take away that competition entirely, we're going to feel it in every one of our neighborhoods, and we're going to be getting calls from everybody on our residential streets with people walking up and down with suitcases. So I can't vote for this recommendation without some measure of competition from the investor class. Let me say, we are all horrified when we hear the anecdotal stories of landlords vacating, evicting tenants to make it a de facto hotel. That should be addressed in zoning and in use. We don't have to address it through Airbnb legislation. So I have no illusion that this is going to pass, but I felt it was necessary to explain why I am putting this forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. Wait, nope, none of that. Thank you. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilor Siomo. I believe this amendment takes a systems thinking approach, as once we allow owners of small units to rent 365 days, which I think we should, and ban investing units, this will likely remove most, if not all, short-term rentals in certain neighborhoods, creating an uneven playing field. By allowing a very small amount of investor units throughout the city, it disperses the numbers of STRs throughout the city to many areas. I'm concerned that completely eliminating investor units will push all the short-term rentals out of downtown and into the surrounding neighborhoods, where the most affordable housing exists today, therefore limiting the affordable housing. Totally eliminating investor units will be counterproductive to what some say we are trying to do here, create more affordable housing. Allowing 5% of buildings with 10 or more units to be used as an STR spread out the options and will help to preserve affordable housing in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I want to thank Councilor Siomo for putting this forward. And I do want to thank Councilor Flaherty. I know everybody's given him a ton of thanks, but he's worked awfully hard on this. So agree with him, disagree with him, like him, hate him, or indifferent. He's worked his butt off putting this together. So we do certainly appreciate that. And this goes back to what Councilor O'Malley had said earlier about the consequences, the unintended consequences. When Airbnb started to pop up, I'll be the first to admit, when we started looking at the platforms within our office, I'm a District 5 city councilor, Hyde Park, Rosendale, Mattapan. Wasn't really aware of a huge issue. We had maybe several complaints, nothing big. There's south of 3,700 people on the platform just in Rosendale alone. My District 5 is all 2 families and 3 families. And a little bit of competition may help us from keeping our families to have to leave. So I agree with Mark, and I'll be voting in the affirmative.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I kind of now regret that my amendment capping the days happened at the beginning, because I think I've heard agreement from several of my folks into this will indeed, as it's written, push the issue out more into the neighborhoods. I thought a 120 cap would address that. In all due respect, I do not think having a 5% STR allowance in buildings will address that or address some of the unintended consequences that have been discussed. I think that the way this is written is a little ill-conceived, and I don't know practically how it would be enforced. So perhaps through you to the maker, who determines which 5% of units in a building would be allowed for STR? Is it first come, first serve? Is it based on who's ever lived there the longest? It seems to me that this would be extraordinarily difficult to actually enforce, and that is why I will be voting against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Siomo, you want to address?
So as far as enforcement, if a landlord has a 100-unit building, they can choose what 5 apartments. They can do a studio, I don't think we care. When we try to enforce no more than 4, we came up with the University Accountability Report by address. My concern has always been, when we start counting days, who's going to be sitting at the computer looking at how many days that one is advertised on this platform and advertised on that platform? I think if we get the short-term rental platforms to provide us a university accountability-like report that gives us addresses and basically by address, that's how we would enforce it. I hope that clarifies. And one other thing, particularly in Allston-Brighton, I failed to mention, we have a high student population. A lot of our housing stock goes to student rentals. I see a model that 9 months a year, from August through May, will have student rentals, and then Airbnb June, July, and August. It's actually a pretty good way to make a lot of money off one owner. And again, it's owner-occupied. I get that. I'm an owner-occupant. But I think it really perverts the market. So I just wanted to also say how I think it particularly affects Allston-Brighton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Siomo. At this time, is there a second to take a vote on Councillor Siomo's proposed amendment?
Second.
Madam Clerk, if you could reflect that there is a second from Councillor Baker. At this time, all those in favor of Councillor Siomo's proposed amendment say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The proposed amendment by Councillor Siomo has failed. Councillor McCarthy, moving on to Councillor McCarthy's proposed amendment. Madam Clerk, if you could read a piece of what Councillor McCarthy submitted as his proposed amendment into the record, that would be helpful.
Offered by City Councilor Timothy McCarthy, an ordinance amending ordinance section 9-14, allowing short-term residential rentals in the City of Boston. Section 1 of the City of Boston Code Ordinances, Section 9-14.2, is hereby amended by striking the definition of the term operator and inserting in place thereof the following definitions. There are definitions of operator: a natural person who is the owner or tenant of the residential unit that he or she seeks to offer as short-term rental. Only one owner or tenant may be registered as an operator of the short-term rental registry for residential units, and it shall be unlawful for any person, even if that person meets the qualifications of primary resident, to offer a residential unit for short-term residential rentals. Would you like me to read on? I'm happy to.
Sure.
So just a point of clarification, Councillor McCarthy, you're offering one proposed amendment?
Correct.
Okay, and that is what the Madam Clerk has read?
Yep. And
Or does that capture?
Continue to read?
That captured it.
That captures it.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It's quite long. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I am not a lawyer. I did not play one on TV, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express. So I'm just going to go anecdotally and cover exactly what this means. Basically what this is that if, as a two-family, I own a two-family myself, if my renter, we talk about equity in our neighborhoods. If my renter is a fantastic renter and he or she, the family, are trying to go to Disney World, if they go to Disney World for the week, with my permission, they should be able to Airbnb their apartment for that time period when they're gone. Simply put, everybody's struggling. We talk about how high the rents are, and if this can help a family get away for a week, and the operator, the owner of that home, is happy with those rentals and feels comfortable about that, I think that with a written agreement within that home, they should be able to do so.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor. All set, Councilor Flaherty?
Yep.
Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
I have a question through the chair. At the end of Councilor McCarthy's amendment, there is a note says Section 5, this ordinance shall take effect upon passage.
So what
I just don't.
you're questioning Section 5, correct? Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. So what I'm going to do is take a brief recess because this has different sections and pull out the section that Councilor McCarthy is speaking to make sure that's crystal clear. And then we'll come back with paperwork based on what you just said to make sure that's crystal clear in the language written. Just for a point of clarification, so Councilor McCarthy, we're going to strike Section 5, which is in the written language of Councilor McCarthy's amendment and creates a little bit of confusion. We don't need it, so we're going to strike Section 5 of the proposed amendment. Is anyone else looking to speak on the amendment offered by Councilor McCarthy? Okay, so at this time, is there a second to take a vote on the amendment offered by Councilor McCarthy? Second. Please reflect that there is a second by Councilor Baker. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Nay. Madam Clerk, I'm going to doubt the vote because I couldn't really understand what that was. So at this point, if you could call the roll for Councilor McCarthy's proposed amendment, that would be great.
I think it was cookie talk. Councilor Baker? Yes. Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell?
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo? Yes. Councilor Edwards? No. Councilor Edwards? Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards, no. Councilor Sabi George?
Madam Clerk, I apologize. My vote should have been a no. I apologize. I said yes.
That's quite a race.
Thank you. Sorry
It's been
about
a long
that.
day.
Sorry,
Councilor Sabi George? No. Councilor Sabi George,
My
no.
apologies.
Councilor Flaherty? Councilor Flaherty, no. Councilor Flynn? Councilor Flynn, no. Councilor Janey? No. Councilor Janey, no. Councilor McCarthy? Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley? No. Councilor O'Malley, no. Councilor Presley? No. No. Councilor Wu? Councilor Wu, no. And Councilor Zakem? No. Councilor Zakem, no. Madam President, Councilor McCarthy's amendment on docket 0764 has failed. It's received 3 votes in the affirmative and 10 votes in the negative.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor McCarthy's proposed amendment has failed. At this time, for points of clarification. So right now, I have 3 amendments before me that have passed. One offered by Councilor Wu, the other offered jointly by Councilor Wu and Councilor Baker, and another offered by Councilor O'Malley. At this time, we are going to amend what Councilor Flaherty, who is the chairman of the Committee on Government Operations, has offered. And these amendments will be included into that proposed legislation. And at this time, we are going to vote on the amended version. So that means we're going to be voting on the short-term rentals proposal that has these 3 amendments as a whole. So I'm going to ask that, just out of courtesy, Councilor Flaherty, as the chairman of the Committee on Government Operations, do you wish to say anything else?
No, just a continued commitment and pledge as we gather the data and get more information as this then continues to evolve. Again, case of first impression. We're going to be regulating an industry. Have no idea whether these anecdotal stories and/or there's going to be further evidence, but I know that we work closely with the Mayor's Office and Inspectional Services. We will actually have the data, and then we'll be able to adjust from there. Could be a situation where we may have gone too far and we need to retreat. Maybe a situation where we need to go a little further. So time will tell that, but the commitment as chair will be to continue to work with folks as we roll this out and work with the administration to see if we got it right. And if we did, great. And if we didn't, then we have the ability to come back to this very floor and hash out the details. So appreciate everyone's involvement. This was obviously great work by all of our colleagues, as well as our advocates that were out there. Obviously, ADCO did great with producing some information. The administration, of course, and the Hotel Workers Union. Everyone participated and played a role. Hopefully, everyone feels that their issues and concerns were given a fair hearing and were addressed, objectively. And our hope is we'll just continue to work together and move forward as we move our city forward. So, thank you, and look forward as chair to move for passage in the new draft as amended.
Perfect.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor.
President, and I too would like to thank Councilor Flaherty for his work and effort over the last few months on what we're voting on today, and for the effort of my colleagues for the amendments that were presented today. The one piece that is very frustrating to me is that we did not have an additional working session before today to consider these motions, to have an open conversation about these motions, and to allow the public an opportunity to present their positions, their thoughts on the amendments that we had before us today, both those that were passed and were not passed. We did, since the last working session, have 15 working days that we could have had an additional session. So although I will be voting in the affirmative to support today's order as amended, I am very frustrated, very disappointed that we did not have another opportunity to discuss this as colleagues in an open forum with the amendments that were before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and many thanks to all of my colleagues and the mayor and his administration. A special thank you to Councilor Flaherty for his leadership on this issue. I know that this has not been easy. We've had a 5-hour hearing. We've had working sessions. I agree it would have been helpful to have yet another working session to consider all of the amendments. But I also want to offer my deep gratitude to all of the residents, all of the neighborhood groups, all of the advocacy organizations for their engagement on this issue, which was very meaningful and helped inform my thinking. And I think that we have a better ordinance for it. I do plan on voting yes. I think inaction is not an option, that we need to do something to reel this in. I'm particularly grateful that we have addressed the investor units and that we have eliminated the investor units. That was very important to me. It was also very important, though, that we would recognize and provide some protection to the small owner occupants. And I've heard from several people throughout the city and certainly throughout my district who are using short-term rentals as an opportunity to earn additional income, whether it be some of our elderly who are trying to pay off their mortgages, someone who wants to maybe start a business. I've even heard from residents in my district who use a short-term rental to help subsidize a long-term tenant so that they don't have to charge a market rate rent. So I think it was really important for me to kind of strike that balance around getting rid of the investor units, which we've done. I certainly appreciate the amendments that have been offered, particularly one on the data and the reporting. I think that is a very important piece as we move forward to really understand what the impact of this will be on our city and by neighborhood. I know in my particular district, there aren't even that many that are eligible, and so I know there's a deep concern that the downtown demand will move its way into our neighborhoods. I think it's going to be really important for us to monitor this going forward. So again, I just wanted to commend my colleagues, certainly the chair of GovOps, and all of the public for their engagement. I literally have received thousands of emails on this issue. So I appreciate all the work that has been done, and I'm glad that we're moving forward in such a way that eliminates the investor units but still offers protection for the little guy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue which affects every neighborhood across the city. I'd like to thank Mayor Walsh for his leadership. I'd like to thank City Councilor Michael Flaherty for his leadership on this issue, and also to my colleagues on the City Council for their contributions to the policy discussions we have held over the recent months. I would also like to thank the members of the public who passionately presented their position to us. I'd like to thank everyone who called or emailed my office from my district and throughout the city. I support this ordinance on Airbnb and short-term rentals, and I believe it will strike a reasonable balance to regulate the industry. It will work to regulate investor units in Boston and allow owner-occupants to participate in short-term rental activities. I first became aware of the impact short-term rentals have on local communities when my friend, Mr. Hen Yin Yi, invited me to take a walking tour of rentals throughout Chinatown last year. He brought a friend of his who had been displaced due to entire buildings being purchased by large corporations and turned into short-term rentals called investor units. These investor units were essentially unregulated mini hotels, often with absentee landlords. Mr. Yi and his friend showed me hundreds of these units. They said these were previously occupied by working-class immigrants and their families, many of them low-wage workers. This directly affected the quality of life of residents. Not only were they displaced from their homes, but they were separated from family, friends, and their local health care and social providers. I proudly represent District 2. Chinatown is a big part of District 2. My family and I have always had strong ties to this community. I graduated from high school there. My son attends school there currently. I have seen this great American neighborhood change dramatically since I first attended school there in 1983. Since last fall, I have issued multiple statements about investor units and their impact on housing, the rental market, and local residents. I have also worked to raise concerns regarding public safety, inspection, and quality of life issues like trash removal, noise, and parking. I've heard from residents across District 2, the Back Bay, Bay Village, Chinatown, downtown, Fort Point, the South End, Beacon Hill, South Boston, and the waterfront, all expressing their support for regulations of short-term rentals, and I have received nearly 600 emails or calls on this topic. In the midst of our current affordable housing crisis and concerns regarding our current housing stock, it has been my position that we should phase out investor units. Outside of Boston City Hall, there is a plaque that was dedicated in 1991, and it's important to me in a lot of families across Boston, and it talks about Boston's proud immigrant community. I support this ordinance and regulation of short-term rentals, so we may ensure that areas like Chinatown remain a neighborhood of working-class immigrants. I want to ensure that immigrant workers and long-time residents will not be pushed out of Boston. I want to defend our communities from investor speculation and protect the fabric of our neighborhoods. Regulation of short-term rental is not anti-innovation. We must now lead to address concerns in our city when it comes to short-term rental platforms. I'm proud to work with my colleagues on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll lend my voice to the echo chamber here in thanking our steward of this effort, Chairman Flaherty, for your due diligence. I want to thank Councilor Wu and Councilor Edwards, and I want to thank each and every one of our colleagues. And I certainly want to thank the indefatigable residents and advocates, this broad and diverse coalition of folks who have sojourned for so long You know, last night, I joined many of my colleagues here in attending a Make Boston Affordable community meeting and rally at the Boston Teachers Union, co-sponsored by MAHA and GBIO. 400 concerned residents on a Tuesday night showed up, representing every walk of life. They showed up with tough questions and real concerns, genuine frustration and fear of displacement. And they showed up to extend their hands in partnership and shared work, while also demanding bolder solutions and greater accountability of their elected officials. Towards the end of the meeting, everyone recited, "We're in this together." And indeed we are. This crisis, this affordable housing crisis, is a public health crisis. And it is one that is affecting every person in every corner of our city. I don't think it would be too far-reaching to even assert that there are people in this chamber who have been a part of these advocacy efforts and this coalition who are couch surfing themselves, who are living out of cars, who are living in shelters throughout this city. So after receiving hundreds of calls and emails, I plan to support the mayor's ordinance today without question. Short-term rentals are contributing to this public health crisis and epidemic that is the affordable housing crisis, and without regulation or data collection stands to become an even larger contributor to displacement. The need for more housing that is affordable remains a top concern for every neighborhood, and we must continue to organize, to mobilize, to author and to pass legislation which strikes at the heart of this crisis, which is only growing, destabilizing families and communities, and threatening the health of our workforce and our economy. And it is ultimately not just about political will, it is about legislation. We made great strides in passing the rental inspection ordinance. I think there's work that remains to be done to increase the IDP, to pass comprehensive measures like the Jim Brooks Stabilization Act, tenants' right of first refusal. And I personally hope we will explore real estate transfer fees, which were recently passed in Somerville. Ultimately, I believe this ordinance strikes the right balance, and I hope that we can capitalize on all of the energy that went into this ordinance and keep the focus on whatever levers we have to pull and whatever measures we have to draft to keep Boston affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. At this time, I quickly want to thank, besides Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Wu and Councilor Edwards for their leadership, I have to thank Christine from our central staff. She did a lot of work on this. There were a lot of emails and amendments that came into our inboxes, but the point person for the council was Christine, who took all of that, processed that, answered questions from constituents about what all this meant, the legality of it all, and we often don't thank our staff. So Christine, thank you for your leadership on this. Thank you for your hard work. I appreciate you, and I know we appreciate you. So thank you. Before we take a vote, Councilor Flynn?
Yeah, Madam President, may I?
For what purpose do you rise?
I rise to move to reconsider my vote on Councilor O'Malley's amendment. Second. On the
Okay, this was reconsideration of the...
Yeah, reconsideration.
At this time, Councilor Flynn moves for reconsideration of his vote on Councilor O'Malley's proposed amendment related to the data requirements and the reporting,
No, it's the cap.
the 120-day cap?
Yes.
Which failed? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to go on the record as voting yes.
Okay. And previously, I'm assuming you voted no.
Yes.
Any objections? At this time, Madam Clerk, can you reflect that the Councilor Flynn's vote has been changed on Councilor O'Malley's proposed amendment, 120-day cap that failed?
Thank you, Madam President.
No problem. Thank you, Councilor Flynn. At this time, we are going to take a vote on docket 0764. And we're going to take a vote to... Councilor O'Malley, it changes nothing. It only changes, for point of clarification, it changes the record for Councillor Flynn, who, like me, actually said a vote that was incorrect, probably because we were going so fast.
It was 6 in favor, though.
But it has not changed the outcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley, and thank you for bringing the laughter. And quickly, before we take this vote, I want to just say one thing. I want to thank all of my colleagues for working really hard with the administration. I also want to thank them, Chief Dillon and her team for the hard work, Buddy Christopher and many of our commissioners for their hard work. All of my colleagues work really hard on behalf of their constituents and on behalf of their residents every single day. And one of the things that frustrated me the most during this process was when we would often shape the issue as if it was black and white. This was not a black and white issue, it was complex. And as today's council meeting demonstrates, it was a complex issue with many sides and many perspectives. And what is important is that electeds listen to all of those perspectives, give people time and energy to be able to express that and to truly listen. I want to thank my colleagues for doing that, but I also want to make sure that the public is fully aware that this is not easy work that we do. And to suggest that when you take on an issue that you might vote yes is voting for residents and against residents if you vote no, or that it's corporations against the residents, all of us who are elected who sit in this chamber care about our residents in our district. We may disagree on issues, and that's okay. We won't always agree, but we're all in this for our residents. So a vote yes means we just have a different perspective. A vote no means we have a different perspective. But it does not mean we don't care about the residents in the city of Boston. I wanted to make that point very clear because I respect each and every one of my colleagues for the work they do every single day. So at this time, we're going to take a vote on docket 0764, and we are going to vote to reject the recommendation of the committee report that asked us to adopt the proposed version, and instead vote on this new draft with the 3 amendments that we discussed earlier. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
On docket number 0764, with new draft and 3 amendments of Councilor O'Malley's second draft, Councilor Baker's and Wu, and Councilor Wu. Councilor Baker? No. Councilor Baker? No. Councilor Campbell?
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo? No. Councilor Siomo, no. Councilor Edwards? Yes. Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George? Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty? Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn? Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Janey? Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy? Yes. Councilor McCarthy, yes. Councilor O'Malley? Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Presley? Yes. Councilor Presley, yes. Councilor Wu? Yes. Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem? Yes. Councilor Zachem, yes. For the final vote on docket number 0764, there are 11 votes in favor and 2 votes in opposition. The docket number 0764 passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0764 in a new draft with 3 amendments has passed. And thank you to the folks who attended the council meeting. Thank you very much for today. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 0536, order for hearing regarding vacant properties in the city of Boston.
Shh. We still have business. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, President O'Malley, for sponsoring this hearing.
If I could ask folks to file out quietly so we can hear ourselves. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Council President Campbell and Councilor O'Malley for sponsoring this hearing. We held a hearing yesterday on vacant properties in Boston, and it was a significant first step. I'd like to thank Economic Development Chief John Barrows, Neighborhood Development Chief Sheila Dillon, ISD Commissioner Buddy Christopher, and Chris English from the Mayor's Problem Properties Task Force. We will be sending this proposal back to committee and host working sessions going forward. I was proud to work with Councilor O'Malley and Councilor Campbell on this hearing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President.
At this time, I'm assuming the recommendation is that this docket will remain in your committee, Councilor Flynn?
Yes, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chairman Flynn. Great work yesterday. Madam President, as always, it's wonderful to partner with you on this important issue, not totally dissimilar from some of the important issues that we're discussing today. I thought it was a tremendous hearing. It lasted about 3 hours. Virtually every councilor or his or her staff were present and participatory. It was a very good first step. We're really sort of zoning in on three distinct issues as it relates to vacancy, the vacant commercial districts and how that can have a negative impact on our local Main Streets districts and shopping districts, the vacant, typically higher-end apartments that are used sometimes as tax shelters, sometimes as investment purposes, which also adds to the paucity of our housing stock. And then thirdly, empty lots, which is something that the city is somewhat, not blameless in the equation as well. So I would respectfully ask, after discussing it with you, Madam President, that perhaps the next step is we utilize a working session where we can really drill down. But I was very pleased with a first step and look forward to our continued partnership and work on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say I am so disappointed I couldn't make yesterday's hearing at a medical appointment, but this is so important to our neighborhood in particular in District 5. We have a lot of high-end landowners that are just sitting on vacant, waiting as our neighborhood continues to walk by brown-papered windows. And I'm looking forward to the working session. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with Councilor O'Malley, because he and I both touch an area down that stretch of Rosendale, and we know exactly what we're talking about that we've been trying to work on for a long time, and this could address that. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. And I will quickly add, I thought it was a great hearing as well. Thank you, Councilor Flynn, and thank you, Councilor O'Malley, for the partnership. It really demonstrates that we have a lot of work to do. And frankly, probably this issue should get some more attention than it actually deserves. We're talking about vacant commercial units that sit in our city vacant for a long time, but also vacant residential lots that are both city-owned and privately owned. And when we looked at the list of the vacant residential lots, the majority of them that were inactive, that means nothing is happening to them. These are city-owned parcels, are in Mattapan, Dorchester, and Roxbury. And that bothers me, particularly as the district councilor for Mattapan and Dorchester, those large neighborhoods. And so we have a lot more work to do to create an inventory, to get an assessment of what the number of units are and what the scope of the problem is. But I also think there are a ton of terrific solutions and ideas as to how we can activate those spaces and not penalize those folks who have these lots vacant, but frankly incentivize them to do something with these lots. It's unacceptable in the city of Boston that we have city-owned parcels that have been sitting vacant for a really long time, when this could be housing, when this could be green space, when this could be place for arts, you name it. There's a lot of great solutions from our residents. So I absolutely look forward to the working session, and I want to thank Councilor Flynn for having the hearing so quickly, and Councilor O'Malley, thank you for your partnership, and thank you to my colleagues as well as the administration for their participation. Look forward to continuing the conversation. At this time, docket 0536 will remain in the Committee on City, Neighborhood Services, and Veterans and Military Affairs. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0925, Councilor Presley offered the following resolution, urging the state legislature to support House Bill 3704, an act relative to healthy youth.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I know it's been a long meeting. I appreciate your indulgence here. There is substitute language on your desk. I'm asking that we pass this resolution today in support of the Healthy Youth Act legislation we've been trying to pass since 2011. The recent groundswell of media attention and sexual harassment and assault has prompted a long overdue conversation about autonomy, about boundaries, and about consent. 1 in 5 female high school students experience physical or sexual violence in their intimate relationships, with just 1/3 of them having reported their abuse. This bill will help to reduce rising STI rates, teen dating violence, and sexual assault. The patchwork of curricula that exists in school districts across the state has resulted in a limited understanding of sexual health and healthy relationships for teens, from ineffective abstinence-only programs to comprehensive but non-inclusive sex ed. Our children have fallen victim to a myriad of social and political public challenges. To dispel a common misconception, comprehensive sex education is about more than just sex. It's a chance for our schools to establish a culture of consent, to recognize and prioritize the health needs of LGBT youth, and to provide young people with the tools to build and maintain healthy interpersonal relationships. The Healthy Youth Act will provide an opportunity for Massachusetts to expand health education that empowers youth to make smart and safe decisions when it comes to their sexual health. By providing a comprehensive, age-appropriate, medically accurate sexual education curriculum, the Healthy Youth Act will not only teach kids about conflict resolution, abstinence, and the proper use of contraceptives, but it will also include relevant and critically needed education on sexual and gender identity. Research shows that incorporating racial, gender, and sexual diversity in sex ed can increase engagement in the material studied and how students retain the information. It restores dignity in our educational processes. It reduces the spread of misinformation, and it helps students to feel seen and valued. Massachusetts voters are largely supportive of sex education, with 92% in favor of adopting programs in high schools, and 89% in favor of teaching students how to stay healthy if they become sexually active. And yet, since 2011, we've been unable to pass this legislation. Students all across Massachusetts should have equitable access to comprehensive sex education that is LGBTQ inclusive.
That's right.
And informs youth about consent and healthy dating. It is my hope this body will join me in supporting the Healthy Youth Act and suspend and pass this resolution today.
Thank you very much, Councilor Presley. Councilor Asabi-George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think it's a little fun to talk about sex post short-term rental. I do want to thank my colleague, Councilor Presley. Listen, you want the kids to pay attention. I do rise to thank my colleague on presenting this before us. I'd certainly like to add my name, but I will be supporting this resolution. It is so important that as a city, we're talking about lots of things, but that we're also making sure that we are on track to provide our youth with access to the best education possible. Not just academics, but also skills that will include life-saving skills. I'd love to bring CPR into all of our classrooms, but also an adequate health curriculum that is inclusive to all. And many times, sex education courses in our schools often don't happen appropriately, but when they do happen and they happen right, they are one of the few reliable times that our kids can learn about sexuality and sexual health throughout the course of the early half of their life, which will greatly impact them for the rest of their lives. Studies have shown, and Councilor Presley has mentioned some of this, that a well-implemented sexual education plan can actually reduce risky behavior and support this positive sexual health outcome that we want for our kids, especially our teens. It will reduce some of the risk behaviors that do happen. And it's also our responsibility to make sure that this work is happening in a safe space and in a responsible and appropriate manner. And my experience has taught me both in my classroom, but also with my own boys. The triplets went through some of their earlier, or their initiation into some sexual health last year. And as uncomfortable as it made me, that conversation in the car, the ride home from school that day, was one I probably should have recorded, because it would have won millions on funniest home videos for sure. But for me as a parent, someone who has talked to young people for a long time about topics like sexual health, as a parent, it put me in a very different position. It forced me to have a conversation with my boys about appropriate behavior, certainly for their age, and making sure that the conversation was appropriate. But it wasn't one that I looked forward to, although I had had similar conversations with hundreds of kids over the years of teaching that weren't mine. So it's so important that we make sure this is happening in our schools, that it is happening across all grades, certainly appropriately across all grades, because it does create an environment where our kids are making better choices for themselves, that they're making sure that they are always in safe relationships, and giving them the tools that they need, the resources that they need when they aren't in those situations, how they're responding, and how they are supporting their friends who find themselves in that in possibly risky behaviors or unsafe behaviors, unsafe relationships. So the more we can do to support our youth, the more they can do to support their peers. And it's part of our work, as much as it is to make sure that our kids are starting school at an appropriate time, that they're getting new books or new materials in the classroom. The curriculum, which includes sexual health education, needs to also be appropriately delivered, and our teachers need to be supported so that they can deliver good stuff. So I look forward to joining in support, and thank you for bringing it today.
Thank you, Councillor Sabi George. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Sabi George's name, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Janey, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Zakam, Councillor Siomo, as well as the chair. At this time, Councillor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0925. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0925 has been passed. Moving right along to docket 0926.
Docket number 0926, Councilor Zakam offered the following order for hearing regarding the elimination of the voter registration cutoff law and its effect on the city of Boston.
Councillor Zakam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be very brief. The Supreme Judicial Court is expected shortly to rule on a case, Chelsea Collaborative versus Galvin, which in the trial court and the Superior Court struck down our state's arcane 20-day voter registration deadline. If they do, as expected, uphold the trial court's ruling, I want to make sure that the City of Boston, our elections department, are in a position to register people on the same day or whatever shorter time frame the court directs, perhaps in time for the coming election, but certainly in elections to come. We'll look forward to scheduling this hearing after that decision is made, but wanted to file this in advance to make sure the City of Boston is prepared and ready to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zakam. Councillor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I know the hour's late. I just want to say thank you, commend the maker. It's long overdue, and I look forward to a robust discussion and hopefully changing that cutoff. So thank you for bringing the hearing order.
Thank you, Councillor Janey. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I would just like to thank Councillor Zakam as well, and would just like to ask maybe during the debate if we could also include how we can make sure that our overseas military are also factored in during this decision, if it applies at all.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Madam President.
Councillor Janey and Councillor Flynn, would you like to add your names? Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Flynn, Councillor Janey, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Anissa Sabi George, I got you, Councillor Janey, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Presley, Councillor Wu, as well as the chair. And thank you, Councillor Zakam, for your leadership on this. This is an important case. At this time, docket 0926 will be assigned to the Committee on Civil Rights. Moving on to personnel orders.
Docket number 0927, Councilor Campbell for Councilor O'Malley.
Councilor O'Malley seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0927. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Docket 0927 has been passed.
Docket number 0928, Councilor Campbell for Councilor O'Malley.
Councilor O'Malley seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0928. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0928 has been passed.
Docket number 0929, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Flynn.
Councilor Flynn seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0929. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0929 has been passed.
Docket number 0930, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Flynn.
Councilor Flynn seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0930. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0930 has been passed.
Docket number 0931, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Presley.
Counselor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0931. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0931 has been passed.
Docket number 0932, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Presley.
Counselor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0932. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0932 has been passed.
Docket number 0933, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Asabi George.
Counselor Asabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0933. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0933 has been passed.
Docket number 0934, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Asabi George.
Counselor Asabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0934. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0934 has been passed.
Docket number 0935, Counselor Baker for it should be Counselor Campbell for Counselor
Baker.
Sorry,
That is correct.
Typo.
We will have to edit the.
Yes.
We will have to
correct
edit
both
the-
of those, and also, well, 0935, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Baker.
So Counselor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0935. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0935 has been passed.
Docket number 0936, Counselor Campbell, which will be corrected for Counselor Baker.
Counselor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0936. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0936 has been passed.
Docket number 0937, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Edwards.
Counselor Edwards seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0937. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0937 has been passed.
Docket number 0938, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Janey.
Counselor Janey seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0938. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0938 has been passed.
Docket number 0939, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Janey.
Counselor Janey seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0939. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0939 has been passed.
And docket number 0940, Counselor Campbell for Counselor Janey.
Counselor Janey seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0940. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0940 has been passed. At this time, I'm informed by the clerk that there were no late files to be added to the agenda. Moving on to the green sheets. Anyone wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? Moving right along, I am informed by the clerk that there are 4 late file matters which, in the absence of objection, will be added to the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, those four late file matters are added. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda at this time. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. At this time, I'd like all guests and staff and my colleagues to please. Oh, never mind. Just a minute. I apologize. Councilor McCarthy, for what purpose do you rise?
I'd like to read in war and peace. No. Unanimous consent to make a statement about a festival this weekend.
Go ahead, Councilor McCarthy. Thank you.
As everybody knows, we've been working really hard in Hyde Park for Hyde Park 150 years old. We've had tons of celebrations. It's been really, really going well. Saturday night, I know everybody goes to 1,000 events, but this is an event that I really, if you're around with your family, it's going to be awesome. It's the Hyde Park 150 Street Festival. We're closing off Fairmount Ave all the way into Cleary Square. We have 6 or 7 different breweries coming. We have live acts up and down, tons of musicians. Food trucks will be all around. It's going to be a celebration of really what's best of Hyde Park. So if you happen to be around, text me. I'll meet you for an adult malt beverage and food truck visit. Uber, I suggest. It's going to be a great, great time. So I really hope to see some people there. It's going to be a great time.
And
7 to 11. And the 11 is kind of a maybe 11.
So please join Councilor McCarthy, the best Hyde Park has to offer in Hyde Park on Saturday. Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. At this time, I'd like all guests, colleagues, and staff to please rise as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilor Wu, Ted Schwab and Samira Haj. For Councilor Siomo, Ann Conroy and Florence Barr. And for Councilor Baker, William Fenton, and Jean LeBlanc. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, the chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber at the Boston City Hall on June 20th at 12 noon. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.